I'll give it a little bit of beans if you want it. Oop. Sup everyone, welcome to another episode of Garage Topics. Today is the 2-year review of my ownership of this 2014 Ford F150 SVT Raptor. That's a lot. I'm going to tell you about everything that happened over the course of the past year. If you want to see the first year review, I'll link a video up top and in the description. Basically, I had this for 2 years. I am just shy of 130,000 miles on this truck, which means I put 22,000 miles on this truck over the course of 2 years. This has been 100% daily for the past 12 plus months. I've done more than 10,000 miles annually. I did about 12 this year. Talk about everything I've done in the past year, the expenses, and things that I've noticed over time. If you're new to the channel, thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to subscribe for more Raptor content and more other cool content going on in this garage. But if you're an OG with trucks or this Raptor, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys find some value in this video in terms of my experiences with the truck over the past year, or in 2 years total. Before we talk about some of the updates that I've done this year, I wanted to share how I drive the truck and how I've done it basically since I've had it. It's a road queen. I'm not taking this thing jumping. I'm not taking it off-road a ton. However, when there's an opportunity on a dirt road around here or some just rough pavement road, I plow through it. It is a ton of fun to drive in any kind of bad road situation. It handles it very well, and I don't know, something fun about just plowing through terrible roads where back in my hot boy stage, super lowered cut springs, it would be absolutely miserable going over just small potholes. This thing, it's actually fun. Thoroughly enjoy the truck for that aspect in terms of not caring about what you drive over. And a quick note on these trucks, the values on these F-150 first gens 2010 to 2014 has gotten extremely low the past year. Bad for resale, good for new boys trying to get into this and new girls as well. These are an incredible buy for what they are. I'm going to make a whole separate video on that because I think right now this is probably one of the best half-ton trucks to buy for the money in terms of what it costs to get into and all the features that it gives you. Gas mileage sucks, but these things hold value like crazy, so the gas mileage is just a small cost to pay in terms of ownership. It's not that big of a deal. Do a quick walk around before we get in. Had some mud the other day after I washed it, which is a bummer, but get a little mud on the tires is what you need to do with a Raptor. But paint perfections, ain't painting perfections, none. These vinyls on the top get really bad over time. Mine's pretty damn good. You can see there's some, let's see if we can kind of see it. There's some imperfections in it, but I'd call it almost perfect. I've only got one little spot somewhere where it's a little bit of a crack from a rock chip hitting it, but overall I'm very impressed with how this still looks. It's not perfect by any means, but it is not bad. And I specifically like this truck originally because I did not have the side graphics. These are notorious for rusting out the cab corners here. I've got none whatsoever. However, I've heard that the third brake light is how these become to rust, so I'm going to make sure that I update the gasket in that to make sure nothing happens, and maybe drilling a hole down there to allow water to escape. But other than that, it's been great. No cosmetic issues with this truck whatsoever. Oh man, this is one of the comfiest seats I've ever sat in a vehicle, even more than my 1996 Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon. This is incredibly comfortable, but not too sofa-ish. It's got some nice bolsters. Incredible seat. Let's get out of there. So let's get out of here. Let's go do a little drive. I'm actually gonna go pick up my daughter from school, and we'll talk about this Raptor and what's going on mechanically and some of the other mods too. This truck in the past year, well, let's get it started, has never left me stranded, has never had any massive mechanical issues that prevented me from driving it, so that's great. But like all old vehicles, this thing has needed some maintenance, and these Raptors need a little bit more maintenance than normal. This year, what I did is I got my shocks rebuilt. I sent them to TSW off-road. I've got them installed now, finally. It rides incredible. The only issue I have is that I must have misread the labels that you label the shock condition on, because what you do is they send you shocks, then you send yours back, and you try to match up how your shocks look physically. The shocks I sent him looked a whole lot nicer than the shocks I got back, so that's the only bummer. They don't look as nice as they should, but they ride incredible and have been great. Definitely a mod if you've got over 100,000 miles and don't know if these shocks have been changed. Highly recommend it, feels great. In addition to that, I did all of the control arms, I did the tie rods as well. The only thing I have not done yet is the lower control arms, the bushings and the ball joints, and that's because I want to keep the stock lower control arms. I could have it, take it somewhere, and be a decent amount of labor to take it out, push them in, and then align it. I don't know if I'm gonna just take it out myself, go get it pressed in by someone, then put it back in. Who knows? I just need to do it because that would make it feel incredibly fresh up front. But as far as how tight it feels on center and just driving around, feels great. While I am driving right now, I do not recall the exact dollar amount I spent on that rebuild, but I did it over a Black Friday sale, so I'll put on the video the cost that it cost me to have the shocks rebuilt. And realistically, if this is staying on pavement, I don't know, every 75,000 miles will probably do you fine, or if it's leaking earlier. I think the recommendation is 50,000 miles, but it's probably just over-exaggeration of what you actually need. All right, so the other thing that I spent money on the past year was actually the transmission. So these trucks, they're gas hogs, right? And I think the factory tried to make it as efficient as possible by trying to get as lower RPMs as humanly possible whenever. So like, I'm doing 40 miles an hour right now. It's in 6th gear, logging at 1100 RPM. Let me close this for a second. What was happening with this truck is when it was in 5th or 6th gear and I would get into the gas, it would almost act like it would stay stuck in 5th and 6th gear, like it would lock into that gear. And so I made the decision that probably the torque converter may have been going out. I'd seen other people that have issues like that, and so as a preemptive, kind of proactive approach, I went ahead and replaced the torque converter. So I got a Ford OEM torque converter, did nothing crazy. Thankfully, my buddy Brian helped me get that in at Ford and actually had that change there. I believe I got a pretty good deal on that, so roughly like retail value on what I did there is probably 15 to 1800 bucks for a new torque converter, replace and removal of the transmission back in and out, and then new fluids and et cetera, et cetera. So I did that because that's a whole lot cheaper than getting a whole new transmission. I've had this now for 3 months, and it's gotten a whole lot better, but honestly, I think a tune would fully fix it. So if I put this truck into tow haul mode, it will instantly downshift the second you give it any gas, and that's to help with engine braking and such when towing, and also not to make the transmission and the torque converter work harder when towing. So my thinking is that I could drive it in tow haul mode a lot, but it's pretty aggressive and it's downshifts. Maybe I should look into getting a tune that would make it not automatically go into 5th and 6th gear doing 35 miles an hour. That might solve every drivability issue I have with the truck, but it runs and drives fine. I do wish it was a little bit nicer on and off throttle in 5th and 6th gear. So what'll happen is, like, I'm on 6th gear right now. If I lightly get in the gas, it'll stay in 6th gear and be fine, but if I get into the gas like 20%, there, the downshift is fine for me, but in certain situations, it just won't. It's like it's trying to conserve as much fuel efficiency as possible. So, who knows? Maybe it's just a me issue, but knock on wood, this transmission's probably gonna be fine for another 100,000 miles. Knock on wood. So, like I mentioned earlier, I did the Sync 3 update in this truck, and I did it with all used parts from primarily eBay. Incredible change to this truck and how I use it. It feels so much more modern now because of that. I also added in a wireless module. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. So Sync 3 for this screen size is all wired, CarPlay and Android Auto. With that wireless module, it basically plugs in and acts as a wireless module, so you never have to plug in your phone. It works perfect, it works great. So highly recommend that update. I'm gonna make a whole dedicated video as far as how I did this for so cheap and what are the steps that I had to do to install it. I used Forescan, some of you may have heard of that, to just update some codes, because what happened was I bought my parts from a hodgepodge of vehicles. The computer was a Lincoln, the screen was something else, and so when I turned it on, it thought it was a Lincoln. And so obviously it kind of freaked out. So you go into Forescan, change the codes to program that radio computer to say that it's a 2014 Raptor with these options, and works perfectly fine. I've never done any leather conditioning to this truck, and I feel like I need to, only because the steering wheel now is getting a little bit of a sheen to it. I don't touch the red mark at the top of the steering wheel, so it looks brand new. I guess some people put their hands up there and it looks like a dog chewed on it, but mine looks brand new. The seats, again, have held up incredibly. They're still very, very comfortable. Probably should need to do some leather conditioning to get some of that like sheen out of it to make it look brand new. But the back seats, kids sit in that all the time, so they're not actually sitting in the seats. Those look like they're brand new from the factory. And as we're driving right now, I have 129,776 miles, and honestly, it drives better now than what it did when I first bought it with 108,000 miles, simply because of the suspension updates that I did to it. So I'm doing about 70 right now. I don't know if you can tell, but there is some road noise that goes on. It's primarily from the tires, but it's not a super duper airtight truck from it being the 2014. That's old body style, but honestly, you've got a little bit of music on. It's not loud at all. Compared to a 2024 Ford Bronco that I drove recently, this thing is significantly quieter than that. In terms of the overall issues you may have read about on Gen 1 Raptors, in the past year, I've had 0 check engine lights. The only check engine light I've ever had was the first year, and that was a misfire. The tune-up of spark plugs and coils completely fixed that. In terms of HVAC fans or things like that, 0 issues whatsoever. The AC's always worked, heat's always worked. The valves that separate left to right, what have you, always work perfectly. The sunroof, notorious for going bad. Truth be told, I never use it. It's tiny, so I open up the shade like you see here, but I never open it, and I'm kind of scared to. It's probably been over a year since I've actually opened it. It's just not worth opening. It just doesn't do anything for me. All the windows down are way much more air buoyant than that. So if you've made it this far in the videos, you obviously care about what I think about these trucks, and you may have one or thinking about it. I'll get into a somewhat separate conversation. So I've got car ADD. I like getting new cars all the time. And on my mind, heavily, too heavily some would say, is I really want a newer Raptor, simply because they're more modern feeling and they're faster. Those alone would probably be an indication to buying one, other than expense. I just can't wrap my head around it yet. I'm not saying I'm not gonna do it, but this truck, and these trucks are so notorious for being just dead on reliable. If I'm using this as a truck, and only a truck and not as my main daily, I probably should keep this truck a long time. And in that case, I'd only be putting, I don't know, less than 5,000 miles a year in it, which means that my mileage would, I could add this for 10 years and still have less than 180,000 miles on it. That's weighing in my mind. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should I sell this Gen 1 and get a Gen 2, probably a 2019, 2020, because there's a less issue prone? Or should I keep this truck and get another daily, if you will? I do like that idea a lot. I don't like the idea of having so many vehicles, just because as much as I'd like having 20, or I'd like to have 20 or 30 cars, to maintain those and actually use them is a whole different conversation. So let me know in the comments. I'll give it a little bit of beans if you want it. Oop. It sounds great, right? And it's plenty fast for what it is, but after test driving a couple of second-gen Raptors, it feels slow. But compared to most trucks, it's plenty quick. I have no complaints about how fast or slow this truck is whatsoever. There are no rattles or creaks in this truck whatsoever. And I've taken some of these panels out, right? None whatsoever. So super solid build quality in here. It feels very solid. As you may recall, this particular truck has a rebuilt title. How it got it is, I think it was backed into in a parking lot on that passenger side. So the 2 doors were replaced and slightly pulled the B pillar out to make it perfectly flush again. It's a perfect truck otherwise. It's basically just an accident that happened that someone got it totaled out for. That's a whole separate conversation, but it's a perfectly fine truck. There's nothing mechanically, cosmetically wrong with it at all, and you couldn't be able to tell between this one and a unrebuilt truck, if I'm being honest. There's probably some trucks that are way rustier and have had bigger accidents with clean titles compared to this one, so it's all relative. So I'm getting close to picking up my daughter, so I'm gonna go do that. But when I get back to the house in the garage, I'll wrap up with some final thoughts on my second year with this 2014 Ford Raptor. Final thoughts on my 2-year ownership of this 2014 first-gen Ford Raptor. Maintenance-wise, I spent roughly, let's call it $2,500, $3,000 in maintenance, which is a lot, but this truck is basically good to go. It'd probably go for another 100,000 miles like this. It's kind of just a general thing that's not the truck's fault. I consider that more so maintenance, except for the torque converter that's kind of 50-50. So let's call it $1,500 in unexpected maintenance in this truck and over the course of a year. Not terrible. Never left me stranded, never left me a doubt in my mind that this would get me to where I needed to go. It was more of a preventive maintenance kind of thing. Gas mileage, I got about 12.5 miles per gallon average in this truck over the last year. Lately, I'm actually doing a different commute, so I'm getting 13.5 miles per gallon, substantially better, but in the grand scheme of things, this truck really isn't going down in value, so that you're spending a lot of money in gas every year, but its value when it comes time to sell it, it's pretty much going to be what you have into it for the most part, which is a great selling feature and ownership piece of this truck. Will I keep this truck for the next year? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Should I keep this truck long term, keep on making updates about it, and have some other daily driver and make videos about it? Or should I get rid of it, get a second-gen Raptor, see what all the hype's all about, see if it's actually unreliable or if it's a blast to drive and it looks good and it's worth all the headache? Let me know in the comments what you think. All in all, would I recommend a first-gen Raptor? 100%. I don't think you even need to especially get a 2013 or 2014. You can because of the updated head unit, which makes it easy to get Apple CarPlay. Not a deal breaker. The 2010 to 2012 should just be priced a little bit lower than 13 and 14s. Otherwise, 100% would buy one. Definitely stick with the 6.2 if you can. 5.4s can get you there, but those need to be a lot cheaper as well. So overall, super happy with this truck. Definitely enjoyed driving it. Would recommend it to a friend. So that's all I got for today. Thanks a lot for watching. If you're an OG, I really appreciate you sticking around and seeing what's going on with this truck. Definitely appreciate it. And if you're new, thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe if you can. And if you want to learn more about this truck and Raptors or this garage behind me. Couple things, make sure that your dog doesn't throw up too much because otherwise you'll be cleaning it up all the time. Not good, Ernie boy. Also, make sure you get your annual checkup with your doctors. It's probably free with the insurance and it could save your life because it saved mine. Thanks a lot. Catch you guys later. Peace out.